Hey baby, I hear those blues a calling. It's time for the Frazier and Frazier podcast. Hello, I'm your host, Adam Frazier, and with me is Wes Corwin.
Hey, how you guys doing?
So we just watched season 1, episode 9 of Frasier, Selling Out.
Selling Out.
And this is a fun episode. We've had these past couple episodes we watched have been kind of heavy in terms of subject matter.
A lot of moral quandaries, a lot of exploring the essence of what it is to be a human being, a lot of sadness, a lot of people confronting the difficulties of the human experience. This is kind of a fun, goofy one about product placement, and it was refreshing and good.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it does present a moral quandary for Frasier in that he's concerned about his integrity as a psychiatrist endorsing these products.
Yes.
But it is funny the way he goes about it, and also the character that we're introduced to, BB Glazer, who is Bulldog Briscoe's agent, who decides to represent Frazier and gives him sort of these advertising opportunities.
Right.
So let's get into the episode. We open with Roger, a man calling into Frazier's radio program, basically looking to get advice on what he should name. I guess is a boat.
Yes, it's a boat. He's got this $300,000 cabin cruiser, 48 foot long, and his wife wants to call it Lulu Bell after her mother, and he wants to call it a ship name, the Intrepid, and he called in to Frazier's radio show to get his thoughts on between the two names what it should be. And
which this isn't the type of issue you call into a radio psychiatrist for.
Not really.
This is more like a petty. Well, it'd be one thing if he was calling in about like, oh, I'm having this argument with my wife and stuff like that. But he's wanting Frazier to pick the name of the ship.
It's less that he wants Frazier to pick the name, but he's trying to demonstrate that it's kind of a leading question that he wants Frazier, a local radio personality on AM radio, to so he can pile one more vote and tell his wife no, I asked all these people and they said we should name it my idea, kind of a thing. Right.
So Frazier kind of lets him have it. He has this big long speech about Cornell University and the electron microscope and how it can it's so powerful that it can actually see atoms, which are these very small, minute building blocks of our universe. And even if he were using that microscope, he would not be able to locate his interests in Roger's problem.
Yep.
So that's a big burn right there.
Got you, idiot Roger. I hope you. He's one note. Roger is played by Carl Reiner, who is a comedian known for appearing in Steve Martin movies like The Jerk and The Man with Two Brains, and he was on Caesar's Hour and Your Show of Shows, which are shows that I've heard of because I'm a comedy nerd and old. It's the equivalent of saying someone was on the Colgate Comedy Hour from that. I Think You Should Leave, but he was a famous comedian at one point and continues to be, and that is what I have to say about that.
So the show quickly segues from the Frazier's advice portion to an advertisement. It's a piece of copy, which is an industry term for script from Roz. And it's basically it's an advertisement. He's supposed to be advertising a Chinese restaurant which as soon as Frazier realizes this, he pretends like they're having technical difficulties, and he stops the broadcast.
Goes to a pre-recorded commercial message. He's like, "I'm sorry, we got to take us out." It's interesting. Frazier is on many levels a professional, because the second he gets the sheet of paper, he starts reading it, and then sort of snaps out of it to go step into the booth with Roz and ask, like, "Hey, I don't do personal endorsements. I don't." And then it's interesting because you'd presume that they've had this discussion before, but Roz hands it to him and is like, "What's the big deal? Everybody else on the radio station does this." And he says, "Well, I'm a doctor. The other personalities aren't. If I allowed myself to do commercials willy-nilly, I lose my credibility as like a medical professional. I can't do that." At which point Roz demonstrates that his fly is open, and that ends that back and forth.
Professional. Not that, I mean, if I went to go see a radio psychiatrist and his fly was open, I would be
like, "Hey, maybe I should tell you how to live my life, because my fly isn't down, Frazier."
So in walks Bulldog.
Bulldog. Second appearance of Bulldog.
I don't think we've seen Bulldog yet since episode 2, Space Quest.
Yep, we have.
Where he was briefly introduced. He is the Sport Talk radio host at KSAL.
I believe.
So he's
yes.
In meaning way, he's the opposite of Frazier.
Yes.
He's sort of guy.
I believe this is the second appearance of Bulldog, and also the second appearance of his gong. I believe he also used a gong in the first appearance, and he's using one in.
His gong is like his thing.
Right. That's when you hear Bulldog, you think gong. So he always has a gong. It's one of those things. They could have a sound effect for a gong, but for acoustics, you really need a gong in the studio. So I guess
he's kind of a hipster that way.
Yes, absolutely. It's warmer.
He's going to just rely on a pre-recorded soundbite. He's going to actually have the instruments and sound effect tools in his booth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Roz hands Bulldog the copy, and he agrees to do it. He agrees to do this advertisement that Frazier was rejecting, and he does, and it's really, really good. No, it's not. It's he does a very racist impression of a Chinese man, and God, the studio audience in this episode just eats that up.
So he starts crinkling paper. I said something about ducks.
Talking about how crispy the duck is, and he starts crinkling a piece of cellophane.
And he gets there is an applause break for him. There people
were they just applauding his ingenuity and that his ability to mimic sounds, or was it specifically his impression?
I think we need. I couldn't speak.
I think
to
we need
it.
to find people who were in the audience when Frazier was being filmed
and demand answers from them.
And ask them, like, why did you applaud this?
Everyone else was doing it. I was just following other people.
There was a sign. There was a big sign that says applause. They just had it.
It was a blinking sign. I didn't realize how I was hurting people by clapping. I was just following orders. My one beat that, and we extensively we said this podcast was to point out some of the more obscure references in Frasier and give you some backup information. And I will tell you, I Googled it, and somebody actually asked the official Frasier Reddit, why does Frasier call Bulldog Noel Coward? And we did some looking.
When he first enters the booth,
Frasier is still in the process. It's a very lengthy fly, so he's still working it up to the tippy top of his trousers. And Bulldog says, "Whoa, Doc, this is a radio studio, not a bus terminal." To which Frasier said, "Look who's here, Roz, Noel Coward." And somebody asked the official Frasier Reddit. First of all, they go through the trouble of outlining the entire back and forth to give all the context to say, "Look who's here, Roz, Noel Coward." And Noel Coward, very, very famous playwright from the 1930s. He would write comedies. Some of his plays got turned into movies. and basically he was sort of a Oscar Wilde, where he was famous for being a little bit catty and making very smart, very quick comments. People would ask him questions, and he'd be like, quick quip back at you. So the fact that he got made fun of for his fly being down, he's pointing out, like, oh, real smart one, Noel coward. And
and if I'm not mistaken, this isn't the only Noel Coward reference they make in Frasier. I think there's a later episode where his name comes up.
I can't wait.
Yeah, something to look forward to.
Yeah.
So we go from Bulldog's racist.
We also never bring up. I feel like there should be an ongoing plot in the back of future episodes where where Bulldog is in the middle of litigation over this radio spot. Because I don't feel like it's enough to just have Roz go, we're going to get sued for sure this time. I want to know that the lawsuit is happening.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that. But we cut to Frazier later in his apartment, or he's walking in.
Yes.
He's complaining that he dented his car because the tennis ball that he normally hangs over his parking space went missing, so he didn't know how far to pull up, and he dinged his car.
Right.
At which point Eddie walks in with the tennis ball and just drops it at Frazier's foot.
And that's pretty fun. That's the second thing to get an applause break. And I would have been like, if the other thing hadn't have happened, I would have been like, oh, what a funny joke. But instead, I would have been like, I don't trust you, audience. Is this funny, or is it some comment against the Asian American community? I don't know anymore.
I will say that I think the joke that comes after that, Martin makes the comment, he was bored, he needed a toy, go ahead and throw it, he'll run and get it for you.
And then Frazier
picks up the tennis ball, opens the door to the balcony, and then throws it off the balcony.
Yep. And that was really funny. That was good. The third applause break, and I start to relax a little bit after all that. So then Frazier, after this, decides to call sort of a group. He wants to talk to both of them in hopes that they can provide some objectivity. He starts outlining that he wants to do a product placement, to which Daphne goes, "Oh, you mean like Cher does?" And Frazier takes that as a vote against doing the product placement. Apparently, Frazier's not a Cher fan, which is interesting.
What products has Cher endorsed? I mean, I imagine she's endorsed quite a few.
She's got to have done a Pepsi commercial. I feel
like a 0-calorie sweetener from 1992. That's
she did a commercial for Gap in 2017, but Frazier wouldn't know about that.
No, he doesn't have a future sight like Daphne does.
Oh man, maybe. Do you think she looked into the future to see that she would do a Gap commercial? Oh, I found this article. Let me. I can put it in the. I hope I can put it in the chat real quick. I found this article that says how infomercials ruined Cher's career, or almost ruined Cher's career, which might be. I don't feel like we have time to cover this, but I'll put it in the description of the YouTube thing, and we'll read it later. And if anything
Did Cher come out with her own grill to compete with George Foreman?
I bet the Cher grill really probably burned a few people, and it subsequently really hurt what she had going on.
Yeah. So Frazier is pitching the idea of doing this commercial for the Chinese restaurant on his show, and Martin has a very very simplistic, very logical solution for Frazier's dilemma, in that he should just try the restaurant. He should go to the restaurant, try their food. If he likes it, he endorses them. If he doesn't, then he doesn't have to.
It's not selling it's not selling himself out if he actually enjoys the product and wants other people. Daphne sells it to him as people want your help with their problems. If one of their problems is wanting to know the best place to get Chinese food, aren't you helping them with that problem? And that sort of sells them on.
Very niche.
Yes. I love the idea of somebody in Seattle sitting and going I I want Chinese food, but where would Frazier Crane go?
I mean, I imagine that, yeah,
Yeah.
that happens quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, yeah, Frazier calls. They make a reservation. He doesn't want to get treated like a celebrity. He wants to, call in. I think use a false name so that way they don't like do any special favors for him. Because again, he wants this to be sort of an impartial, decision that he's making. But then when they tell him that they can't fit him in until 10 o'clock, he immediately sort of reneges on that and is like, oh, well, I'm Frazier Crane from the radio.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he gets his reservation at 9:45.
Got him. That's
His
what you
celebrity status bought him a whole 15 minutes.
get. Scored.
That's the
Only other thing to say about this scene is I googled it, and Dr. Sneezy is not a real cartoon character.
Oh yeah, that was one of the jokes we missed. So one of the things that Daphne, so one of the things, the points that Frazier brings up is that he thinks that a doctor selling things is kind of distasteful.
Mm-hmm.
To which Daphne replies, "What about Dr. Sneezy's cold medicine?" And Frazier, of course, points out that Dr. Sneezy is a cartoon character. The fact that he's a giant purple hippopotamus should probably tipped you off.
Yep.
Yes, Wes. That's not a real character.
No, I thought there was a Dr. Sneezy. I was wondering if I could get.
Could have been. I mean, the 90s are filled with products that we have long since forgotten about.
Yeah, like the honeycomb monster.
Exactly.
I think about him all the time and what species he was, but that doesn't have any bearing on Frazier. So let's just keep things moving.
It was like kind of like a bear hamster, like Tasmanian devil type thing.
Right, but like, first of all, how does that tie into honey? And second of all, I think look, you don't know what animal it is if you have to cite 3 different animals in describing the animal. He's like a Furby and like a hedgehog, but he's also got like a rodent face.
I'm looking up other things that lived and died in the 90s. Surge.
Surge was there.
Yeah.
Crazy Craving was introduced as a wild-haired, marsupial-like cartoon character who rapidly craves honeycomb cereal. So they didn't know what it... Oh, okay. So he was
cereal's still around. They just don't use the...
They don't use Crazy Craving because he was a nightmare. So he is technically not an animal. He is the anthropomorphism of hunger. Sort of like a monster based on our fears and inadequacies and our temptations.
Yeah, I get that. Was Crystal Pepsi in the 90s?
Crystal Pepsi was in the 90s, Adam.
Yeah. You should have had Frazier endorse that.
Yeah.
So sorry for the awkward silence.
We'll cut it out.
So we cut to, I guess, presumably the next day. Frazier is sitting in his booth at the radio station. He is doing the commercial for the Chinese restaurant, which he evidently enjoyed. His is noticeably less racist than Bulldog, so I'll point that out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He does mix up in a case of somewhat insensitivity. He does say, like, if you've got a yen for Chinese food, but yen is Japanese, as Roz is very quick to point out.
Well, and this is something that I think they bring up in the IMDb goofs section. I don't know who maintains that, but evidently they're very on top of these types of things.
Love it.
Yen is a currency in Japan. However, the English word yen, meaning a desire for, is actually Chinese in origin.
Oh, well, there you go. Roz, that is a fun double joke.
So once again, Roz, who is so quick to, give us the story of Lupe Velez, just completely wrong.
That is so fun. That's a consistent thing. Roz is full of urban legends and misinformation. I am so glad we have that in her. I'm glad that the writers are on top of it enough to keep giving her all the almost correct things to throw at Frasier.
Yeah.
That is delightful.
So Frazier, having finished his commercial, he leaves the booth. He runs into BB Glazer, who is a new character. This is the first time we're meeting her. She is Bulldog's agent.
Mm-hmm.
She is played by Harriet Sansom Harris.
Harriet Sansom Harris.
Who's very funny in this. I mean, I'm sure she's funny in other things, but as BB, she is hilarious.
Very funny.
And I'm happy that, I mean, we'll see more of BB as the show goes on, but BB's got some pretty good episodes, and she's just very. I mean, we don't really. This is the first time we're meeting her, so I won't spoil too much. But we'll get to see sort of how her character evolves a little bit. So she sort of corners Frasier in the hallway. She kind of gives him the pitch that she wants to be his agent.
Yes.
Which Frasier is initially hesitant about because, again, he doesn't really want to lend his name to products. As a professional psychiatrist, he doesn't think that it's very tasteful to just be endorsing products left and right.
After this first experience, he's a little high on it. He's like, the business went up 30%, so this immigrant family running the restaurant benefited, I benefited, the station benefited, everybody, but he's still cautious moving forward. He still doesn't want to dive headfirst into commercialism and product placement.
And BB doesn't blink at this information. She is so she does a whole spiel about how refreshing it is to meet, I guess, have someone like Frazier with his integrity, which I imagine is all just sort of a ruse to kind of butter him up. Somehow they get to discussing college tuition.
Yes.
She talks about...
BB is sort of playing Frasier. She knows exactly how to play this instrument that is Frasier. So at first she talks about how wonderful it is that he isn't seduced by money, and then starts bringing up her children and how she has to fly to Palo Alto because her daughter is at Stanford, and then asks about Frasier's child, and Frasier has a 5-year-old, of course, Freddie. And
actually at this point, so Frasier, not a good dad. Can't even remember how old his son is.
Cannot recall at all. To which BB replies that, like, oh, you won't have to worry about things like tuition and college and all that for years. And it's been... so Frasier wants him to go to Harvard, like Frasier did. And BB asks if he's seen the projected cost of college, which that's a joke that stings in 2020.
I'm looking up Harvard tuition. Yeah, in 2010, Harvard's tuition was $33,696.
And if you look it up in 2020, Harvard's tuition is $47,730.
Yeah, it just goes up.
Do you understand? Like, that's 10 years of difference. That joke only gets funnier as time goes forward.
Exactly. So, because obviously Frasier does care deeply for his son, despite not remembering how old he actually is.
Yep.
He becomes swayed by BB's pitch.
Yes.
To do products, but sort of insists that he has to try the product before he can endorse it.
Absolutely.
So that's his one sort of holdout.
Yep. We then sort of smash cut. Well, there's a transition card. We smash cut over to like a home and garden store, or I guess the script refers to it as a bathroom showroom, where Martin and Daphne and Frasier are all sitting in the middle of a store as people are walking around it, and they are in swimsuits in a hot tub to try out this hot tub. Because Frasier read the script for this commercial, and it says, "My friends and family love it," so he has insisted on bringing one friend and one family to this hot tub to try it so he can make sure that he's endorsing the product honestly and with integrity.
I think it's sweet that Frazier is implying that Daphne's his friend now.
That's kind, because the commercial doesn't say my friends and my family and employees. There's a friendship that's brewed, and that's so sweet and so nice.
So yeah, they're trying out the hot tub. Frazier is talking. I get the sense that he's trying to sell it to Martin and Daphne a little bit too. He brings up the fact that to Martin that it's the unit is made from the same heat-resistant space-age polymer that is used by NASA's space shuttles, which I guess is supposed to kind of dazzle Martin.
Right. That Martin. Next time I'm re-entering the Earth's atmosphere in a hot tub, I won't have to worry. And Frazier basically is looking for the keywords "I like it," so he will feel comfortable saying in a commercial, "My friends and family like it." And
yeah, he's kind of having to reach a little bit. I think.
Daphne is comfortable saying that she likes the hot tub. Martin is a little bit more cantankerous, a little bit more crotchety. So Frazier kind of has to harp on him. He eventually admits that the hot tub is helping his hip, so he does like it. And Frazier literally says, "That's all I need to hear. My friends like it. My family likes it. I like it. I can do the commercial. Freddie can go to Harvard." At which point, he sees an older man sort of look like either like a different face Ted Danson.
No,
huh? Got older man with white hair like Ted Danson today walks in, and Frazier's like, "Oh man, that's Dave Hendler. He's the head of the Seattle Psychiatric Association," and he takes a big breath and ducks under the water. To which Daphne apparently has either a very comprehensive knowledge of the Seattle Psychiatric Association, or Frazier has brought up this man many a time, because Daphne looks over and goes,
It's stated that he lives in their building. So, I mean, theoretically, it is feasible that Daphne has run into this man.
I mean, it's not like he lives on their floor. It's presumably they live on a big skyrise, because they have this big sight of the entire Space Needle and all that. But I don't know.
Daphne is familiar with this man.
Daphne is very familiar with who Dave Hendler is, and looks over and goes, "That's not Dave Hendler." To which Martin says,
"That's no Dave Hendler."
I know Dave Hendler. I've seen Dave.
Dave Hendler's a friend of mine.
You, sir, are no Dave Hendler. Is what. To which Martin says, "Shh, don't worry about it. Enjoy the quiet while you can." And that's sort of the end of that scene.
Yeah. So again, we cut to Frazier in his booth doing not in his booth. He's in his apartment this time.
Watching he's listening to a radio. He's got Daphne behind the couch. He's got Martin on the couch. They're listening to the subsequent ad he made after feeling comfortable with the thing. Listens to it, soothing bubbles that'll ease your aching body. There's Dr. Frazier Crane in these pressure-packed times. He's advertising the jacuzzi. And that he asks immediately after it's done playing. He asks Daphne and Martin what they think of it, and Daphne says, "I could almost smell the chlorine." And Frazier goes like, "What did you think?" And he goes, "I liked it." And Frazier goes, "Really?" He says, "Yeah, I liked it." And then Frazier said, "You really, really like it?" And he said, I liked it. And Frazier goes, "What was wrong with it?" And Martin said, "Nothing." And Frazier says, "You hated it, didn't you?" And Martin says, "Yeah, good night, Frazier." And just sort of a fun. It's very clear at this point Frazier he can't find internal approval for what he's doing. Like, he really is disgusted at the idea of selling out, so he needs constant external validation that what he's doing is okay, which is probably the first hint that what he's doing isn't okay, at least to him.
Yeah. So exactly. So there's a ring at the old doorbell, and Bibi enters. So she is wanting to do a television commercial. She's wanting Frazier to do a television commercial. Let's back up a little bit, because first she walks in, she sees Daphne. And I guess it gets the impression that, like, I don't know what the implication is, actually, because Daphne's just kind of standing there. It's not like they were in some sort of compromising position, but BB acts like she just caught, like, Daphne standing in the middle of Frazier's apartment, like, wearing, like or something. Yeah, like,
She reacts very big, and then Frazier's like, no, this is my dad's physical therapist, to which she starts reacting normally.
Yeah.
Then, I just
want to make sure that we don't miss this next part, because
this is very important. I agree, it's very important. So, BB asks, I got you an attractive offer, and we know they're serious because it's pay or play. And Daphne replies, that's the best kind. You get your money whether you do it or not. And then Frazier stops BB's pitch on the commercial to ask Daphne how she knew that. At which Daphne confesses there's a chapter of her life that she hasn't mentioned to the Frazier family back when she was 12.
Kind of built it up like it's some dark chapter.
Like, this is a horrifying secret that wouldn't have gotten her the job if she brought it up. She'd never put it on her resume because people would be disgusted with her if they knew this. When she was 12 years old, she was in a television show back in England, and then she tries to cut out having said that. And then Frazier calls her back and wants more information, to which Daphne says she started... What happened? Daphne says, I started a TV series. It was very popular. Mind Your Knickers, which I believe the catchphrase of her character was, "Whoop, caught me with my hand in the biscuit tin." Sort of. I think that's where that. Maybe there's sort of a.
Did I do that?
Yes, I think that's what I'm very confident that that's where that came from. It was about a group of high-spirited, ethnically diverse 12-year-olds in a girls' private boarding school. Of course, this show would have taken place in the 80s or the 90s in the UK, which obviously means ethnically diverse isn't that diverse, but that's neither here nor there. She was Emma. She was the short, spunky one. Of course, by the end of the series, she was 16, 5'10", and they had me boozies bound up tighter than a mummy. Well, I'm off, and then she leaves.
And once I know you were very excited to hear this information.
I couldn't wait for more. I was hoping we'd get I was honestly hoping
that's the thing. This never comes up again.
Brokenhearted, heartbroken. I get that the
Daphne's life that we're teased never gets brought up again, which is one of my biggest regrets for this entire series, is that we didn't get like an episode where like they did like a reunion show for like Daphne's
for Mind Your Knickers. It would be I don't even need that. I just wanted the like after credit, the sting. I get that the not to spoil it for you guys, but the sting afterwards is that Frazier holds his breath for a really long time in the jacuzzi. I would have much preferred a quick 30-second like scene from Mind Your Knickers. Would have been magical. Just like the too many cooks, like the intro credits, just like a little bit of Daphne Moon in Mind Your Knickers in the beginning bit would have been wonderful.
Missed opportunity. Huge missed opportunity. Never comes up again.
Never.
Ever.
Mm-hmm.
This is the one time it gets brought up. Very disappointing. But in any case, we've got to move on.
We have to.
BB wants Frazier to do a commercial for Emery's Nuts.
Emery's Nuts, which Frazier cannot endorse. And BB's like, why not? Well, he doesn't like them. They're very fatty. They're very salty. And on a personal level, they mess with his diverticulitis, which is a thing with your with your guts. And then BB says, of course, like they're nuts. They're all of these things. And he's like, I can't.
And nuts, I think in recent years they've gotten sort of reevaluated by the scientific community. I think they've got fat, but I think it's like good fat, right?
Nuts are apparently a very healthy snack food and pack a bang. I'm reading this straight off of CNN, and this article's from 2017, so I don't know anything. But apparently nuts are... It's one of those... Ask your doctor about nuts. Go ask. Like the commercial should end with a good 20-second like blurb like ask your doctor if Emery's nuts are right for you. I think that's my stance. But Baby, instead of bringing up the addressing this nut controversy, is like, well, I guess they'll have to find somebody else to take their 5-figure deal. To which Frazier says 5 figures, and they go back and forth about Frazier's like, I can't do it, and BB brings up the fact that this is TV, this isn't radio, and if you do a TV spot, you're opening yourself up to a whole new market, and you can go from a regional personality to all of a sudden you're a national personality, and you can open yourself up to not just the Pacific Northwest but the entire country. As she slowly slides these nuts toward Frazier, who pops one in his mouth and smiles because he's sold out.
He could be on the next Hollywood Squares.
He could. Don't give it away, Adam. We're almost there. We're almost to the Hollywood Squares.
Fine. So we get to the next scene, the big kahuna, which is what BB calls television.
Mm-hmm.
So Frazier is sitting in a makeup chair. He's getting ready to do this commercial. He's reading the script that they gave him for the commercial, which basically is two nuts, like two men in nut costumes arguing with one another.
Right.
And one nut is saying, I'm a nut. The other nut saying, no, I'm a nut. And then Frazier's supposed to come out and say, hold it, you're both nuts. I'm Dr. Frazier Crane, noted psychiatrist, and I know
a nut when I see one. Which is sort of an anti-mental health comment to make when you're a psychiatrist.
Right, so it could kind of make him look bad, and I think Frazier picks up on this.
Right.
He says, I'm just not sure about that line. BB tries to reassure him. The line's a scream.
Mm-hmm.
And Frazier's like, well, it's what's the word I'm looking for?
Yeah.
And BB, we start to see sort of her more sinister side.
The cracks start to appear in the mask of friendliness that BB has, and she starts, what, tuition? Retirement and then calms down and sort of embraces Frazier and gets close to him and says, I'm sorry, I just want so much for you. And Frazier insists that he's uncomfortable, and BB goes, Frazier, how long have we been together? And Frazier says 6 days. To which BB replies, do you think I would ever have you do something you were uncomfortable with? What makes this so wonderful is you're spoofing yourself. You're showing that psychiatrists can be loose. You're making shrinks more accessible to the average person. And Frazier says, so what you're saying, I'd be doing psychiatry a service with this commercial? And that is... so BB has managed to successfully convince Frazier, like, okay, fine, the joke is fine. At which point he reads a bit of blocking in the script that says Frazier comes out of his shell, and then we see a comedically large peanut shell start to get wheeled behind Frazier as BB sort of spins his chair so he can't see the shell, and explain that it's a lighting term. It's a technical term about lighting.
Yes, saying that it's supposed to be a lighting term, when in fact it actually literally refers to Frazier bursting out of a peanut shell, which of course is not what a respected psychiatrist should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit goofy.
Yeah.
So she's kind of shielding him from the truth.
Yeah. Much like a peanut shell shields the peanut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we cut to, I guess, a little bit later.
Right.
Frazier walks into Cafe Nervosa, and there is Niles. You thought we were gonna have an entire episode where we didn't see Niles once.
You're an idiot. Niles is contractually obligated every episode. David Hyde Pierce. So Frazier runs into the Cafe Nervosa, and he's got these little napkins in his neck, tissues in his neck.
Right. Makeup so it doesn't get on his collar and stuff.
Yes, and Niles is like, why do you have those on? And Frazier's like, well, they didn't tell me I could take it off, so I kept it on. And Niles makes fun of him like, oh, I bet people are going to walk up to you. You kept him on so people could walk up and be like, oh, are you an actor? And then you could crow and gloat and strut in a way you can't do otherwise. And Frazier points out that Niles' license plate says shrink, which kind of gets at him a little bit of hypocrisy.
Yeah, if you don't want to be... Yeah, exactly. Like, if you've got such a problem with people coming up to me asking if I'm an actor.
Yeah.
Why do you have a vanity plate that says shrink on the back of your car?
Now, this scene actually has a really fun dynamic. So Frazier has this entire time been talking about his ethics and his morals as a psychiatrist, and he outlines his problem to Niles, who as we know is a fellow psychiatrist. At least Frazier sees them as equals, and Niles will frequently bring up that how he doesn't like the program.
He's a bit gatekeeping.
Yes, absolutely. So Frazier outlines his entire issue that like this commercial. I'm worried about compromising my integrity as a medical professional by advertising this thing. And Niles is like, oh, this isn't a problem. And Frazier's like, oh, it's not. And he's like, yeah, like you're not selling out. You sold out a long time ago. You lost all credibility the moment you did the call-in show. And Frazier presents an argument he's presented previously, like it's not like I can't do what you do with one person, but I get to help thousands of people every day. And Niles dismisses that and says, you're talking about your professional dignity, but you lost all of that the second you went on the air. You stopped being a doctor and you started being a showbiz, a song and dance man. You're not any different than that movie star who let everyone look up her skirt in that film, that did nothing but complain that no one took her seriously as an actress, which I think is Basic Instinct. I'm not sure.
I heard that line and my first thought was Marilyn Monroe.
You might be right. But then why wouldn't they just say they can say Lupe Velez, but they can't say Marilyn Monroe?
Well, I don't know. You're thinking they're referring to Sharon Stone.
I am.
Sharon Stone. I don't recall Sharon Stone ever really complaining that she wasn't being taken seriously as an actor.
And the timeline might not
anything that Sharon Stone's done recently.
And Basic Instinct came out in '92, and Frasier came out in '93. So that would be top, but I don't know if that's actually the film. I'm trying to look up which film they're talking about, and it's not. I just see the quote. I don't see that trivia bit.
Yeah, well, we will ask the writers of. We will ask.
I'm gonna tweet at David Hyde Pierce to see what movie he's talking about.
Well, we'll ask Lloyd Garver, who's the writer of this episode. He'll tell us.
Oh, I hope so.
So yeah, basically Niles' whole pep talk to Frazier is that it doesn't really matter whether he goes through with the commercial or not, because basically he's already given up his integrity, which is a very, very mean thing for Niles to say.
I found it. I'm sorry. I have to cut in. You are correct. The movie that he is referring to Marilyn Monroe, and he's referring to the 7-Year Itch.
Yeah, because I think Marilyn Monroe is somewhat known for the fact that she was never really taken seriously. She was a pretty face,
Right.
It was back then. But she was a serious actor or actress, and she didn't really get the respect that she deserved.
Yes.
And then John F. Kennedy had her killed.
He sure did. Had her murdered. It's a tragedy. Next thing. I guess we can sort of. Do we have anything left to say about the Niles Frazier scene?
No, let's go to Frazier Crane to Block, which is our next scene.
I was actually stunned. I was like, man, we've set up so many plot threads. I can't believe, I wonder how we're going to wrap it. And then I checked the timer on the episode and I realized, we've got a minute left in this episode. We cut to sort of the wrap-up conclusion, which is Frazier. It's very late. No lights are on. Martin comes outside to see Frazier is still on Martin is like, what are you doing up? And he sees Frazier hitting the rewind button, and he's like, oh, you're not watching the dumb commercial again, aren't you? And Frazier's like, I can't get it off my mind. Did I do the right thing? And it's sort of implying that Frazier did the commercial and now he's watching it and he's ashamed of it. To which Martin says, of course you did. Freddie's going to thank you for it, as if when he has the money later, he'll be able to finance Freddie's tuition and all that. And Frazier asks him to watch it one more time. They play it, and you see someone dressed like an almond and somebody dressed like a peanut or a
It
cashew.
plays out exactly like it does in the script, where you have two nuts arguing with one another over who's a nut.
I'm a
There's
nut.
big
No, I'm a
yeah,
nut, which is odd because it's interesting that a doctor has to come in and tell them they're both like it's not mutually. I don't think there can only be one nut. It's not Highlander rules. You can have multiple nuts. I think.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, when we have a peanut in the center, it bursts open, or it sort of unfolds rather.
Right.
And in the middle, we don't see Frazier.
We see Dr. Joyce Brothers here to tell you
Yes.
that she's just crazy about Emery's nuts.
And Joyce Brothers is a noted psychiatrist.
Interesting thing. I want to point this out, and I don't know if it's because of the clout Dr. Joyce Brothers has, but she doesn't say the line, "I know a thing or two about nuts." She says, "You're both nuts," and then I'm here to tell you I'm just crazy about nuts. So if you're crazy about nuts too, pick up a can of Emery's today. She doesn't say like, "I know a thing or two about nuts. I'm a psychiatrist."
Yeah, she probably saw that line. Well, yeah, she probably saw that line, and because she's kind of the real deal. She's often credited with being the first to normalize psychological concepts to the American mainstream.
Right.
She's a big deal.
And she is a smart cookie. She won the top prize on the $64,000 question.
Yes, which is a game show.
Yes.
Was a game show.
It was.
She was also, as I think it gets brought up later, she was also on Hollywood Squares.
Yes. It's important. She was on the Hollywood Squares. She was on $64,000 question, which, when you adjust for inflation, eventually became Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. That was my joke. But yeah, it's pointed out that Dr. Joyce Brothers. So Frazier and Martin start to joke back and forth. That Frazier's like, you're right, Dad. Freddie will thank me. Dr. Joyce is his favorite psychologist. And Martin, while complimenting Dr. Joyce, also they bat back and forth the fact that she was on Hollywood Squares. She was always under Charlie Weaver, which I guess might have been a joke about her and Charlie Weaver being flirtatious or something, because it gets a laugh from the audience, unless the idea of Charlie Weaver as a human being is funny. I'm not really sure. Charlie Weaver... It feels like...
Looking at his picture, I'm laughing.
Yeah, no, he's a funny guy. I'm not saying he's not funny. Dr. Joyce and Charlie Weaver. But, so then Frazier and Martin start to trade back and forth like, oh, who else was on Hollywood Squares? Paul Lynde was in the middle. George Goldblum was under him. And where was Wally Cox? Upper left next to Rosemary Dubar. Which in the chapter is of course called Frazier Crane to Block, which sort of implies Frazier could have been a Hollywood Square, possibly.
Yeah, that would have been the ultimate expression of his celebrity.
Yes.
And that brings us to the sort of post-credit scene. I found this interesting because this is something they don't usually do with post-credit scenes, where they go back to a scene that happened earlier in the episode. Most of our post-credit scenes happen, post, what we just saw.
It's a little button on top of like, hey, we're wrapping up. If there,
we have Eddie doing something funny.
Yeah, it's what usually if there is a B. Again, most of these episodes are just A story. We don't have any B stories yet, but it feels like if there is a B story to a Frasier episode, usually Frasier gets into stuff, and we set up one joke where Eddie gets into shenanigans, and the post-credit sting is usually like the button on the B story of like Eddie's still getting into shenanigans. But this time...
Right, so in this case, I guess it would have been like Eddie gets the door open to the balcony and just jumps off.
Which that was probably the first take. That was probably draft one, and they were like...
No, that's too dark.
Too dark.
So they cut to Frazier, Daphne, and Martin still relaxing in the hot tub, or rather, Daphne and Martin are relaxing in the hot tub. Frazier is ducked below the water because he's still trying to avoid the guy who he thinks is the head of the psychiatric association that he's trying to avoid.
Yes.
And it shows us just how long Frazier can hold his breath before he has to come up.
But until everybody reacts shocked. Daphne.
Oh, the other interesting thing about this is that you actually hear the sound of him coming up for air. Like usually the end credit scenes are completely silent, but they actually have the sound effect of him coming up.
Yep. And everybody turns to look, Daphne and Martin, and not Dave. When everybody looks, and it's fun.
Yeah.
It's comedy.
Well, that is gonna about wrap things up for episode 9, Selling Out. Let's talk about it a little bit more. I mean, again, this is the first time we're being introduced to Bebe Glazer, who will be Frazier's agent going forward. He doesn't go through with the commercial, but he's still working with Bebe.
Love it.
So we will see more of Bebe in the future, and the kind of shenanigans that she gets Frazier into, as well as seeing more of her sort of conniving, personality. She's very manipulative.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll get to see that. That'll be fun. I'm looking forward to that. I think the next big episode with her has one of my favorite moments with her, so I'm looking forward to that.
She did a great job. She was a great character. I think she adds a lot. It's fun because we've seen a lot of good-hearted people. We haven't seen someone that wants to prey on Frazier yet, and this is the first somebody that wants to give in and feed into his id and his temptations, and that's really fun.
Right. Yeah. And because Frazier is he considers himself a very moral person, but Bebe doesn't seem to have any of the same sort of, she doesn't hesitate when it comes to, is something going to, is something morally questionable, or is it going to further my goals?
Yes, she will take the latter of furthering her goals every time. Exactly.
So, and any particular, any jokes that we really liked?
So again, if there's one thing I've picked up, it's that I love the comedic timing of David Hyde Pierce. We only had one Niles scene this entire, and my favorite joke. I know that we started. This was a humdinger of a comedy episode. We started with 3 different applause breaks, but my favorite joke was when he's listing. Now that we know he's describing the 7-year itch, it's funny that Maris and at first I thought it was Basic Instinct. I was like, oh, they rented a movie from the past year while it was still popular. I love the idea that Niles and Maris rented a movie from 1955 and got so hot and heavy they pushed their beds together, which included pushing 2 beds together from across the hall to get them in the same space.
It's funny how much of Niles and Maris's life we get just described to us, and it gets gradually more it's one thing that they had to push their beds together. It's another thing that they had to push it from another room that was across the hall. That's just sort of elevate.
It's a great 1, 2, 3 punch. The reveal that they push their beds together, which is a very 1950s married couple thing. I like the idea that they sleep across the hall, and then Frazier, trying to get things back on track, says, "Niles, will you just tell me, would you do it?" To which Niles says, "A nude scene? Well, I suppose if it were integral to the plot," which is just delightful, just 100%. Love. Pretty. I think the entire crux of the show is the moral quibblings of Frazier and Niles. Just delightful every time.
One joke we kind of skipped over that I enjoyed was after Frazier throws the tennis ball off the balcony.
Yes.
And sort of motions for Eddie to go get it. Martin sort of chimes in, saying he didn't think that was funny. And he knows where you sleep.
Delightful.
I love it that Martin speaks for Eddie. That's just sort of a very cute, man and his, beloved pet thing to do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I think that's going to about do it for today's episode. Wes, I want to thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me on this. What else would I do?
Next time? I assume so.
Yep. Yeah. I'm gonna check in and see if they took my call. I'm trying to get on Hollywood Squares, but if I don't, then I'm gonna be here. Absolutely.
We'll just talk about briefly. We've got our next episode coming up called "Oops." When Frazier contributes to the rumor mill, he causes Bulldog to lose his job. So we're gonna get another Bulldog episode.
We're losing Bulldog. Bulldog's out. Oh man.
Well, we're gonna see, Wes.
Okay.
We're gonna see what happens with Bulldog. But I mean, heck, after that whole commercial that he did for the Chinese food restaurant, I don't know. I could.
You know what? I'm actually glad. I hope he gets fired.
Okay. Well, we've got something to look forward to then. All right. Well, that's going to about do it for the Frazier on Frazier podcast. Again, I've been your host, Adam Frazier. Wes Corwin, thank you for joining me.
Absolutely.
And good night, everybody. The Frazier on Frazier podcast wishes to thank KACL780.net for providing episode transcripts and Ronald O'Connell for providing our theme song, Frazier MIDI.